But my guess is Obama knew perfectly well that not everybody believed it. But as in what you're saying about Gore, if you can persuade people that everyone believes it, then they don't question it.
In the near term, in the short term, do you have any predictions of what the stimulus model could bring in as far economically?
It'll consume lots of money. It will continue to be used to subsidize government things that mostly shouldn't be done, is my guess.
Okay.
There will be less of it because, in spite of the fact that Obama won't admit it, on the evidence it was a failure. That is to say, he made predictions of what would happen, and what actually ended up happening with the stimulus was worse than what he had predicted would happen without the stimulus, as well as much worse than what he had predicted would happen with the stimulus. And I think that at this point, people are becoming increasingly skeptical, as they should be. I think I'm in favor of people being skeptical of the government, because quite often what it says isn't true. Sometimes what it says is true, and sometimes I've seen a number of stories that Steve Jobs is dead in part because instead of following standard medical advice for what he had, he used some sort of a unconventional diet to try to deal with it, and he probably would have died eventually of it anyway, but that he would have lasted noticeably longer. So in that case, the official doctrine was right, but quite often it isn't, and
Yes.
you can't rely on its being right.
Any final comments? Any pieces of advice for people who are interested in learning more about independence in general?
No, but on environmentalism for a moment.
Go ahead.
I think people who criticize the global warming stuff are attacking the wrong part of it.
Okay.
That I think it is probably true that world climate has been gradually going up for the last century or so. It may well be true that it's due to human activities, though I'm less sure of that. The weak part is the claim that making the world a few degrees hotter would be a catastrophe. That it's not as if the present state of the world was designed for our convenience. Human beings live in areas with a very wide range of climates. And it is true that if the temperature goes up by a few degrees, sea level will go up by a few feet, and we'll lose a little bit of land along the coasts. But it's also true that the northern edge of both Eurasia and North America is an area where the land is useless because it's too cold. And if the temperature of the world goes up a few degrees, we'll lose a little bit of land along the coasts, and we'll gain a little bit of land as a little bit more of Canada and Siberia become inhabitable due to the warmer temperature. And I have not seen any convincing argument to show that global warming is bad. Everyone takes for granted it's bad because it's a change, and we've got a sort of a conservative bias. Undoubtedly, it will impose costs on some people. Undoubtedly, it will produce benefits for some people, and I don't see any grounds for saying it's clear that it'll do more harm than good. Let alone it's clear that it will be a catastrophe, and we have to do very difficult things to stop it. So I think that rather than the fact of global warming is the weak part of the argument that people ought to attack.
Absolutely, and I think so much of this argument also puts the burden on average people to not produce so much waste. For example, when you've got the Department of Defense operating on the planet as probably the keystone polluter on the planet.
That I don't know, but the argument on global warming is not really pollution in general, but carbon dioxide.
Sure.
Anyway.
Well, that's that. Thank you so much, David,
Sure.
for speaking with us, and enjoy the rest of your stay in San Diego.
I intend to, especially if it gets a little bit warmer.